As NRL fans, we love nothing more than for our minds to be made up after round one every single year. So today I thought we would rank every single NRL team after round one because not only is it relevant for at least now, but also it's probably going to be hilarious to look back on at the end of the year. So let's do it 17-1 purely based on round one. So we're not including three-peats, we're not including two-peat wooden spoons, and we're not including where I predicted your team to finish. So let's get straight into number 17, which is the Dolphins. I didn't think anyone could beat number 17 after the team I originally had slated in there, but that performance on Sunday Arvo was really disappointing. We thought that all off season the Dolphins were going to be up, especially early on in the season when they did have their best team on the park. Obviously that's not the case, but still, you thought that fins up fever was going to kick back in to start 2024, and they just didn't. I mean, not one player won their individual battles. So when you're conceding over 40 points in round one, yeah, I'm gonna put you at the bottom of this list. Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs. I know it's only round one, but we're not here to talk about that. That was just not good enough because it was the same problems we have seen for a number of years now. Cameron Cirello just cannot figure out how to play the best players in their best positions, and they looked really one-dimensional. The only thing I can give them that is a positive is that most Bulldogs team of the last 5 years or so are probably getting whooped by 60 plus. Well, at least they got that going for them, but especially in attack, it's just the same old Bulldogs we've been seeing for a number of years now. At 15th, the Gold Coast Titans. No Foran, no Fafita, no Campbell. Probably three of their best four players, including Big Tino, but still, that was diabolical. Going up against the team that many of us, including me, had as our wooden spooners. They got the key Saturday night slot. They were at home in front of a pretty decent Gold Coast crowd for their standards, and they just got blown off the park. They had plenty of footy early, didn't know what to do with it. I think we saw how reliant this team is going to be on Foran, especially early on in the season. But I can't have them any higher than 15th. In fact, you could probably make an argument they should be below Canterbury. At 14th, and probably the most disappointing team of round one, I do have the Newcastle Knights. I mean, where do you start? They just got beaten up all around the park. The Canberra Raiders did what Ricky does best. They made them sink to the level of the Canberra Raiders, and they just couldn't hang in the fight. Kalen Ponga was kept quiet. It raised even more questions about their halves, and their forwards got absolutely battered. Even their back five, Gagai and Bradman Best, got absolutely outclassed by their opposite numbers. So yeah, they're in the bottom four. Easily, for me, the most disappointing team of round one. This is where we have the Penrith Panthers. A lot of people are probably going to chuck them down the list for not scoring a point, and I totally get that, but I can't help but feel we've seen this from Penrith before, but we're just talking about round one, so they didn't score any points. You're lucky you're this high on the list, but defensively they were very good. Honestly, you could probably argue that they're probably a top 5 defensive team of round one. In saying that though, you can't score a bloody point. You're the 3-time defending premiers, so if you're going to roll out a donut in round one, I ain't putting you any higher. The New Zealand Warriors, first 25 to 30 minutes, maybe I'd have you a bit higher, but that just wasn't good enough. The rest of that game for the New Zealand Warriors to only score 12 points with all that possession. I could forgive it if they capitalised, causing the fatigue to the Sharks in that second half, but they didn't, and that's why they're so far down on this list. Shout out to the crowd. I mean, New Zealand, you guys are on fire. As a crowd, you're number one from what I'm seeing so far in 2024, but as a team, first 20 minutes, you're top 3. The rest of it, you're lucky you're only 12th, because from that position, from having all that momentum, from having all that possession, you should have won this football game. At 11th, the West Tigers. You didn't win, you didn't lose, and that's because you didn't play. Honestly, could have had you lower, but I'm going to be nice and chuck you at 11th. Our first winner of round one is coming in at number 10th. You might be saying, Ranger, why are they so low? That's because I just think 9 teams played better than them in round one, and it's hard to judge the Parramatta Eels because they were playing with an injured number 7 and they still managed to completely dominate their opposition. So maybe I'm being too harsh, but I think this just shows more about what I think about the Bulldogs than I do think about the Eels. And the Eels were good. I think they've got so many more gears to get to. I think they'll be in the top 8 at the end of the year, but I can't have them higher than 10th with some of the teams I've got above them. At number 9, I do have the Brisbane Broncos. I thought the Broncos defensively were pretty good for about 60 to 65 minutes. Obviously, the Sydney Roosters came late at the back end of that Vegas game, and they looked really good. The reason I've got the Broncos so high despite losing is that in terms of quality, and you'll get a vibe from this, is that those Vegas Vegas games were just far superior than anything else we saw in round one. Is that due to reffing? Is that due to the occasion? It doesn't matter. You guys know the title and you know the vibe of the video by now. So I've got the Brisbane Broncos at 9th. I can't believe this team is going to be in the top 8 for anything this year, but the St. George Illawarra Dragons, I will eat that humble pie. You guys looked absolutely outstanding. You guys did hear me speak about the Titans, so that's why maybe they're a bit down lower on the list than most people are giving them credit for. But they did exactly what they should have done against a very weak opposition. I'm not fully on the bandwagon because of all the teams you could play in round one. A Titans team missing 3 of the best 4 players is probably the best way to go. In saying that though, hard to be critical of a team. Shout out to Tyrell Sloan. I ain't worried about you anymore. At number 7, we have our final loser of round one, and I do have the South Sydney Rabbitohs. They were missing both of their starting centres, and honestly, the quality of that Manly South game was probably the best we have seen so far. Latrell Mitchell looked great. Cody Walker played decent despite a bad hamstring, and like I said with the Brisbane Broncos, the reason I've got these guys above some of the teams that actually did win, it was just because of the quality of those games. They were, I think it's fair to say, easily the best games of this round one, and 2 of the best round one games of all time in terms of the quality. So that's why I've got the South Sydney Rabbitohs this high, and frankly, mainly just because of their attacking power, but the Rabbitohs did provide me with more positives than the Broncos. Moving on to number 6 as we enter the top part of this little ladder, and we're going with the Canberra Raiders. The Canberra Raiders sunk the Knights down to their level, and they just bashed them. They got into that arm wrestle, what Ricky always loves to be in. There's a reason why even at their best, the Melbourne Storm couldn't beat this Canberra Raiders team. That is because of the way Ricky Stewart coaches this team, and the Canberra Raiders got their first 13+ win since 2022, and that's a team that made finals last year. So congratulations to the Canberra Raiders. Can they keep this sort of game up all year? I'm not too sure. Obviously, I had Newcastle very low, but I can't deny how good the Canberra Raiders were. The Cronulla Sharks, and honestly, I didn't think they were that good. That first 20 to 30 minutes, like the Warriors being so low, that's where the Sharks should be, if I'm being honest, but they've provided so much resilience, so much guts. That was an unbelievable effort to come back and end up winning that footy game. Cronulla, you guys have gone to a new level this year. So if I'm a Sharks supporter there on the Shire, I'm getting just a wee little bit excited. At number 4, I've got the Sydney Roosters. Like I said, probably the second best match of the round, and they looked really good against last year's grand finalists. They did it without their alpha dog in the middle, and they did it without their star winger. Now, the Brisbane Broncos, they were missing a few players too, but you can't deny how good the Sydney Roosters were. Easily their best round one game under Trent Robinson. So if they can actually start fast and therefore get a decent ladder position by the end of the year, then they're going to be very, very scary. In at number 3, I've got the winners of the best match, in my opinion, of round one. The Manly Warringah Sea Eagles did look a bit shaky on the edge there defensively, but every single time they got the footy, even if they didn't score, they just looked like scoring. The way Luke Brooks, Tom Trbojevic and DCE were combining would make some teams very jealous, considering that's all we hear about teams that struggle early on the season with a bunch of new recruits. But Manly looks so dangerous every time they touch that American steed, and so they've got to be number 3 for me. The North Queensland Cowboys are sitting number 1 on the ladder for a reason, and they probably should be number 1 on this list, but you guys know who that is by now. But the North Queensland Cowboys look so very, very good. If I had to be a little bit critical, is that they did concede some very easy tries, but it is round one. Todd Payton will be very happy with how their attack looked. And the best part about that is, it wasn't even Scotty Drinkwater producing the magic. They battered the Finns all across the park, so they're an easy number 2 for me. And at number 1, just like they've been for the better part of 2 decades now, the Melbourne Storm were for me the best team of round 1. They only scored 8 points, but they held the Penrith Panthers to 0. That was easily the best defensive team of round 1. And what makes this number 1 for me is that was one of the best defensive performances I have seen in rugby league for a while. And considering it's round 1 with the lack of match fitness and the fact they were missing their best player, a top 3 half in the NRL, I can't not have the Melbourne Storm number 1. They were the best team of round 1 for me. Will they be number 1 next week? I'm not too sure. But ladies and gentlemen, there is every single round 1 team ranked just for you. Let me know if you agree or think I'm an idiot in that comment section down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Smash that like button if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.